Well, hello there, grown black folks talk. Four things I need you to keep in mind in light of the felony conviction of Donald John Trump. I'm sitting here because I've got a project I'm working on today at my piano, and it just so happens that it happens to be in that key, and I'm wearing kind of the colors I need to for that. Um, I have deeply mixed feelings about this conviction, but I'm going to approach this in a nonpartisan way as much as I can. I have a well mixed audience group, and I understand that, of course, people who are upset about this are going to be looking for every occasion to take out their frustration at this moment. And I'm hoping in approaching this in a nonpartisan way, I can do things that can help us all. Because I think that it's very easy for us to be drawn into it's very easy for us to be drawn into narratives that actually serve no purpose and solve no problems. I'm going to link Black Women Making Money's video about this in the description. It's specifically directed toward Black women in particular. I'm going to spread a slightly broader net than that. But she says don't celebrate if you're a Black woman. And I'm going to touch on some of the reasons why as one of my four things. But I wanted to cast a slightly broader net because there are things we don't realize about the American system, which is how we keep getting emotionally caught up on narratives that are going to take us nowhere but to destruction as a nation. So there are some broad brush things that we need to look at. The first one is number one, nothing has actually changed in terms of what we're going to have to do in November. As United States citizens, we are held directly responsible for our leadership in ways that nations and countries that have not been talking loud about their democracy have to do. As Abraham Lincoln said it, very controversial Republican president of 160 years ago, said, government by the people, of the people, and for the people. We're held responsible in a way others are not, and therefore we don't get to get an easy way out. As I speak to you today, the same two candidates for president are the same two candidates for president. And the conviction of Mr. Trump does not dislodge this because he has been convicted of 34 counts of what's called a Class E felony in New York State. And since it is a state conviction, it does not affect his federal rights as a United States citizen in the slightest. Meaning he can still run for president, and because New York State does not forbid felons from voting for different offices so long as they are not actually in prison, he can even vote for president. Now, he lives in Florida, but as I heard on the news, Florida defers to the state of conviction. And since New York would not prevent him from voting, then Florida isn't either. So he can still run, he can still vote for himself. He has not been hampered. Also, because these are Class E felonies, it is very rare, even for a first offender. This is the first actual criminal conviction for Mr. Trump. A first offender on what's called a white-collar crime, which is what this is, rarely receives prison time for these offenses. Now, the judge has some leeway. Now, when you understand that and put a pin here, you'll also see why Judge Merchan was not eager to put him in jail for contempt of court. Because you might have been in a situation in which he would then have to, in sentencing, talk about time served. The maximum that Mr. Trump can receive is 4 years. Now, 4 years in prison is a long time when you're just about 77 years old. That's a long time. And if you're running a presidential campaign, even 6 months is a long time, but there is no guarantee that he will serve any prison time because of the nature of the felonies of which he has been convicted. So it's important for you to understand that in the same way that Mr. Trump will be able to conduct his campaign until now, till his sentencing date on July 11th, there is a possibility he will be able to conduct it afterward. Because the other thing that the judge can do is look at the fact that this is a presidential candidate and also defer the sentence. And he can keep deferring it. So if President Trump were elected, he would have to serve it after his term. As a federal executive, Mr. Trump cannot, as president, pardon himself from a state crime. New York would have to elect a governor that would be willing to do that. But the point is, This means, for all intents and purposes, unless Judge Merchan decides to go ahead and remand him, but even if he does remand him to prison, guess what? Donald Trump's still going to be on the ballot. The Republicans didn't put anybody else up there. Joe Biden's still going to be on the ballot. The Democrats didn't put anyone up there. So no matter what your position is on Donald Trump or Joe Biden, we're not getting off the hook on this. You are still going to have to go out and vote your position. We're not getting off the hook on this. Second, the other thing we're not going to get off the hook on as black people in particular, but really for all United States citizens, is we have to get back into the mindset of solving our own problems as much as possible. Black women making money has made the point many, many, many times, and it applies to everyone. There is a new economy out there. You're either picking up skills that will help you, and you're networking and using those skills, or you're not. And if you're not, politics is not going to help you, because the global environment, politics can hurt you, don't get me wrong, but the global environment and economy is changing greatly, so that if you cannot learn how to make money in the new economy, it doesn't matter who the president's going to be. It doesn't matter who controls Congress that much, and you can go ahead and drown in the midst of prosperity. For other people who have managed to master these skills, we are going to have to understand that it is not going to be our elected officials and whatever party we think is in office that's going to solve our problems. We are not going to be let off the hook for that either. So, understanding that those two things are our positive responsibilities. First of all, if you want to see a new president, or you want to keep the one you have, or you really can't stand either one, you still got a choice you got to make somewhere. Now, there are some Green Party candidates. I think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is still in the race, and I know the Green Party will be running somebody. Those are all choices that you can make, but whatever it is, you are responsible. The conviction of Donald John Trump does not change that at all. Whatever it is that happens to you in your personal economy, it's not Mr. Trump's fault. It's not Mr. Biden's fault entirely. Your personal economy is your personal economy. You getting the skills when we have YouTube right here, which is what you're watching me on, is on you now. It's a choice you have to make. Now, we hope we have a federal government. Everybody goes to the polls hoping that we have a federal government that is at least not an enemy to progress. And if you look at your presidential policy in that way, again, I'm not telling you who to vote for, because everybody looks at that a little bit differently. I'm going to keep this nonpartisan. I'm also going to keep this nonpartisan, but it's going to upset the right wing more than the left on this. If you are a black person, understand. D.A. Alvin Bragg, we give him his props. First district attorney ever to succeed in prosecuting a felony trial and obtaining a conviction on a former American president. But that means that supporters who are unhappy about this, who are in positions of authority, Black Women Making Money mentioned this also, are going to be looking to work out their frustration somewhere, just like humans tend to do. Madam D.A. Letitia James and Madam D.A. Fani Willis have already caught quite a bit of this in the teeth, but Madam D.A. Letitia James has succeeded in putting together the greatest civil judgment ever enacted against a former president. I think there isn't a greater one in history. So while we as black women are noticing the black wife effect trend, which has its own problems in it if you do not consider vetting, you need to understand that the 32% of people that did not want to see Joe Biden, well, I should say 32% of the electorate, that did not want to see Joe Biden in office last election still doesn't, and that no matter what happens in the next election, they're not going away. They will be in position, and since black people and black women in particular are the most recognizable Democrats, be careful. Be careful. Black Women Making Money said, don't celebrate. I'm not out here to tell you what to do or not do. I am, however, trying to give you some wisdom. However you feel, you own your own feelings on this. You own what you do, but understand your public persona. You probably don't want to take off 1/3 of the adults that you meet. I'm just saying, you probably don't want to do that. It's not a smart move for you. Okay? Beginning now, um, and definitely going through November, no matter who is elected, because one of two things is going to happen. Either Donald Trump supporters are going to be empowered or they're not. Either Joe Biden supporters are going to be empowered or they're not. But no matter what happens, you're going to have some significant number of people who are deeply frustrated and humans who are deeply frustrated and cannot do the least bit of anything about either Donald Trump or Joe Biden will look for their proxies. It's what human nature does. So if you are a black person, you are a proxy for Democrats. Now, the numbers say that 11% of black men voted Republican in the last election. That means 89% didn't. How is anybody supposed to know looking at you walking down the street? The latest numbers I've seen say black women voted for Democrats 95% of the time. Now, I happen to be an independent, but how does anybody know that about me walking down the street? Be wise in how you move. And for black women in particular, I already said, not knowing for sure that this was going to happen today, but I've been talking about, okay, don't take the black wife effect and not be critical. People select people for different things. If all these different white men are interested in getting a hold of black women for intimate things, well, violence is intimate too. Revenge rituals are intimate too. And that actually brings me to point 4. And this is nonpartisan. I've seen a whole lot of hate watching and vindication wannabe rituals around the trials of Donald Trump. And again, at this point, he has a criminal conviction and the loss of 3 civil lawsuits, and Miss E. Jean Carroll is getting ready to sue him again, and he may lose that lawsuit and have $600 million of civil judgments he has to be worried about, and he has not been derailed in his purpose one bit. And as much as people talk about Sleepy Joe still the president, and just sitting back and just watching all of this unfold, and all he has to do is figure out how to hold the American economy together for just 8 more months. Jigger things a little bit with his appointee at the Federal Reserve. Black Women Making Money mentioned this. And he can probably hold on because the consequences of things like Roe versus Wade are not going to go away. The growing awareness that people have of Project 2025 and do not want that is not going away either. So all of this hate watching and carrying on and calling people names and let's go Brandon and all the rest, all this is doing is building resentment between us as United States citizens. And now there's plenty of resentment already there. It was even before Donald Trump originally came into office. It's real interesting that you have a president my color and people suddenly talking about they need to take their country back by virtue of in 2009. It's not like I didn't notice. I was full grown then. We have this idea that everybody on the other side of us, so that's going to be either 68% or 32% of us are outright demons. And so we attach vindication rituals to these different trials. Now, Donald Trump, like I said, has been losing trials pretty consistently in the last 6 to 9 months. But he actually isn't stopping. And even though the vitriol against Joe Biden is considerable, he's still the president. And he will be unless he passes away, gets sick enough for Kamala Harris to take over, or is not reelected. So we're up here spending all this energy looking for any clue that we're going to be vindicated in our opinion about whatever it is. One of the things, and what I'm going to say here is from the viewpoint of a devout Christian, it may not make sense to you. It really depends on what your spiritual and ethical system is and how disciplined you are in it. But one of the things I remember my parents taught me was not to ever worry about vindication and revenge because the Lord had said, vengeance is mine, I will repay. I was taught that very young. And I believed it. And then I lived a while and I saw God do that to people. Before I was out of my 20s, I saw the Lord taking people that had done me wrong and done things to address that with them that was so harsh that I am slow even to ask. But that also means I get to separate from things completely and not look back. See, when I got mad about how my cousin was treated in the music industry 16 years ago, I wrote my first book. Now, I didn't know anything much about cover design or anything like that then. This was book number one. I was 27. No one had published in my family like that before. So, I didn't know everything about book design, but the information in here was top notch. And I was able to help a lot of people with this over the previous 16 years. But now I have a magnificent cover designer. So when I do edition 4 for that, it's going to look a whole lot better. I might even ask her to go into the ChatGPT alternative that True Mystique is building, and even find it'll be formally the Freedom Guide for Music Creators, and we'll see what's out there in terms of ChatGPT. I'll be able to do a little bit better. But see, I didn't get mad. I got productive. Then later on, about 11 years after that, I discovered something that I was excited about, not angry about. And the last 20 years have not been easy. From a family perspective, older relatives passing away and being a caretaker. A business in the community has not been easy in the last 10 years. I have 9 figures worth of problems to solve on any day basis, even now. But in being able to, and of course, interpersonal things happening, but even in going through those things and going through the emotions that come with that, the ability to not need to seek vindication and thus be tethered to situations has been to my advantage, because it allows me to save energy to think and move on about things I want people to know about and be excited and be a blessing, as opposed to spending energy. That's book 5, Seizing the Crypto Bull Run for Financial Freedom, instead of looking back in anger and being worried about how I'm worried about what I did not get. I see so many people all caught up, including, unfortunately, Mr. Trump himself, caught up on that 2020 election and what he thought should happen, and spent almost 3.5 years looking backwards. Many of his supporters are looking backwards. Many of Joe Biden's supporters are looking backwards, talking about what should have happened to him after he was impeached and how he should have been put in jail a long time before this. Folks, we are human beings, not God. We can put our will out there, claim it and name it and claim it, grab it and have it all we want. We are dealing with people who are on a level of power that we cannot directly grapple with. I go back to the first thing I want you to say. Here's how you have power over that. Go vote. And then go manage your life in terms of how you move in this economy so you're not dependent on people who do not care about you. Both of those are your responsibility. With that, learning how to do your local politics. A lot of what I've learned how to do in 20 years has to do with doing local politics. My local politicians, they know who I am. They don't really like to see me coming. But the people have the power to put the politicians in line, at least locally, to a point. And some locals in New York, 12 of them, managed to at least put a slap on the wrist of a former president. That's kind of power that you have. Now, people will disagree about whether it's political or not. But the point is, we are responsible to use the power that we do have wisely. And all this looking for vindication for or against Donald John Trump is a waste of our time and energy. So those are the 4 things I want you to take from this conviction. I am actually sitting where I'm sitting, getting ready to do some work that I was preparing to do no matter what happened today. As Black Women Making Money says, we have to use our networks and use our skills. So I got to keep going. My gift, of course, is artistry of multiple kinds, but music is a big one. And this is a fair piece of money if I can get it done. I also heard from someone else who's paying me for a commission today. And I'm going to be talking to the musicians that are going to be working on that. So I'm going to need to continue my networking on all aspects and all streams of income that I have. The conviction of Donald John Trump makes absolutely no difference. I have now said all that I intend to say. On Dwa Aunties tomorrow, as we talk about the deep parts of 2025, Project 2025, I will mention the conviction of Donald Trump in passing, but that really doesn't give us any extra power to solve problems that as Black women, we need to solve for ourselves. So he will be a historical sidelight, and that's it. I say this sometimes. Those of you who watch this channel I'm always telling you at the end, get your life together. If you see my reels on Facebook or Instagram, like get your crypto education together. Many of our elders told us to mind your business. Mind your business. Black women making money so they will. Be indistractable. If you don't, you'll drown. I'll put her video in the description. That's all I've got for you. Be well. Stay focused. Bye.